My family ignored me my entire life and used me to pay for my golden child sister's university. But when they humiliated me at Christmas in front of everyone, I cut off the money and now she dropped out of law school. My parents are broke and they're begging on their knees, but they'll never forget what I did to them. I'm 28 years old. I work in tech as a developer, and I feel like I can finally breathe after years of carrying a weight that was never supposed to be mine. The thing is, I cut ties with my family like a year and a half ago, and even though I know a lot of people are going to think I'm a complete asshole for what I did, I need to tell this story because I feel like if I don't get it out, I'm going to explode. And look, I'm not looking for people to tell me I did the right or wrong thing. I just need someone to understand why I got to this point, you know? I guess I should start at the beginning, when my sister Grace was born. I was 7 years old, and honestly, at first I was excited to have a little sister. You know, typical kid thinking it was going to be like having a new toy or something. But from the moment Grace came home, everything changed. And when I say everything, I mean absolutely everything. My parents, who were never the most affectionate with me, but at least paid attention to me, suddenly acted like I was invisible. Every one of Grace's achievements was celebrated, like she discovered the cure for cancer, like the girl said her first word, and there was a party, learned to walk and they took like 1,000 photos, got good grades in elementary school, and she was basically a genius according to my parents. I could have brought home the best report card in the world, and all I'd get was an, "Oh, that's nice, Andrew." And that was it. I don't want to sound like a bitter, resentful brother, but the truth is it did affect me. I grew up feeling like I didn't matter, like I wasn't enough, like I was always going to be in the background. And the worst part is that Grace wasn't even mean to me when we were kids. I mean, she was just a kid being a kid. My dad worked at a factory and was always in a bad mood, and my mom was a secretary at a school. We didn't have a lot of money, but we weren't doing badly either. Let's say we were lower middle class in a small town where everyone knows everyone and everyone knows who has what. My grandparents, my mom's parents, were the only people who actually paid attention to me. They went to my soccer games when I was little, asked me how I was doing in school, took me out for ice cream on Sundays. They were basically the only ones who made me feel like I was worth something during my entire childhood and adolescence. When I was like 15, my grandparents died 3 months apart from each other. My grandfather first, heart attack, and then my grandmother, who basically let herself die of sadness according to everyone. It was devastating for me, like I lost the two people who actually loved me, and my parents didn't even notice how badly I was doing because they were too busy making sure Grace, who was 8, it wasn't traumatized by her grandparents' deaths. I remember crying alone in my room for weeks, and no one came to ask if I was okay. Not once. Fast forward to when I was about to finish high school. Grace was like 11 and was already in every extracurricular activity possible. Piano, dance, debate, whatever. My parents spent all their money on her classes, her uniforms, her competitions. When it came time to talk about college, I had good grades. I wasn't a genius, but I'd worked hard and had a decent average. I told my dad I wanted to study something related to computers because I'd always liked computers, and I was always fixing the one at home when it broke. My dad literally laughed in my face and said, "Andrew, we don't have money to send you to college. Besides, you're not college material. Better get yourself a job and help with household expenses." Just like that. And my mom just nodded and added that Grace was going to need support when it was her turn to go to college because she actually had a future. I stood there, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't believe it, but at the same time I could, you know what I mean? It was exactly the kind of thing I'd experienced my whole life, but this time it hurt different because they were basically telling me my future didn't matter. I was 18 years old, had no support, and a clear indication that I was expected to work to help finance my sister's life. So that's exactly what I did. I moved to the city like 2 months after graduating, got a job at an electronics store, shared a tiny apartment with 2 roommates who never cleaned anything, and started teaching myself to code. I spent my days selling laptops and cables, and my nights watching YouTube tutorials and taking free online courses. I slept like 4 hours a night because I was obsessed with learning, with improving, with proving to everyone that I did have a future, even though nobody believed in me. It was hard. I'm not going to lie, There were nights when I ate just rice with butter because I couldn't afford more, but I kept going because the idea of going back to that town and admitting they'd been right about me was worse than anything. After like a year and a half of studying on my own, I got my first real job as a junior developer. It didn't pay much, but it was triple what I was making at the electronics store, and I felt proud, like I was finally building something. Did I call my parents to tell them? Yeah. Like an idiot, I thought maybe they'd be proud. My mom said, "Oh, that's good, Andrew. Hey, now that you're making better money, you could help us with some expenses. Grace is going to start high school next year and needs a lot of things." No congratulations. No questions about my job or how I got it, just immediately asking for money. And here's where I admit I made my biggest mistake. I started sending them money. Every month, like $500, sometimes more. I justified it by telling myself they were my parents, that family helps each other, that Grace was my sister and it wasn't her fault. Our parents were like that. But the truth, looking back, I think I just wanted their approval. I wanted them to finally see me and say, "Thank you, son. We appreciate you." Spoiler alert, it never happened. My mom's calls were always to ask for more money or to tell me how incredible Grace was, how she'd won such and such competition, or how all her teachers said she was going far. My dad hardly ever talked to me, and when he did, it was to make fun of my job, saying things like, "So they pay you to sit in front of a computer all day. Must be easy." Or comments like that made me feel like garbage. Grace graduated from high school when I was 25, and she was 18. She was accepted to law school. Not the best in the country, but a decent one, and my parents were euphoric. My mom called me crying with happiness, saying her baby was going to be a lawyer, that she'd always known Grace was destined for great things. And then came the bomb. "We need your help, Andrew. Tuition is very expensive, and with housing and books costs, we can't afford it. You're her older brother and you have a good job. Surely you can help with something." Something turned out to be basically everything. They sent me a breakdown of expenses, tuition like $30,000 a year, plus housing, food, books, everything added up to almost $50,000. And they expected me to pay most of it because, according to my mom, you didn't have to pay for college, so it's fair that you help your sister. I should have said no. I should have hung up the phone and blocked their numbers. But I didn't. Instead, I calculated how much I could save if I lived even cheaper, if I never went out, if I basically put my life on pause. And I agreed to pay the entire first year. $35,000 that I'd saved during 3 years of hard work, plus what I'd have to keep sending monthly. I transferred the money to my mom, and all I got was a "Thanks, Andrew. Grace will be very grateful," though Grace never called to thank me directly. Grace's first year of law school was a nightmare for me financially. I worked like crazy, had gotten a better position that paid more, but basically all my money went to her education. I lived in the same shitty apartment, ate pasta and chicken every day, hadn't bought new clothes in years, didn't go out with friends because I couldn't afford even a beer. And meanwhile, I saw on social media how Grace posted photos at nice restaurants, in new clothes, weekend trips with her friends. When I asked my mom why Grace had money for those things, if I was paying for everything, she told me it was friends inviting her, or that she'd saved from summer jobs. Excuses that were obviously lies, but I wanted to believe. During that year, Grace's calls became more frequent, but it was never to ask how I was doing or to thank me, it was always to ask for more. That she needed a new laptop because hers was too slow, that she needed money for a study trip that was supposedly mandatory, that she needed this or that. And I, like an idiot, kept sending money. My mom would call saying, "You can't disappoint your sister, she's counting on you," and I'd give in every time. Grace stopped pretending to be grateful, stopped saying thank you, just sent messages like, "I need $500 by Friday," like I was an ATM. By the time the first year ended, I was physically and emotionally exhausted. I'd spent almost everything I had, was in debt with credit cards, and didn't see any real gratitude from anyone. But I convinced myself it was just one more year, that after that she'd graduate and get a good job, and maybe then things would get better. How naive, right? That summer, my parents invited me to a family gathering for Christmas. Like, "We want everyone to be together. It's been a long time since you came to town." I hadn't gone in years. always made work excuses. But this time I felt I should go. That maybe after everything I'd done for Grace, they'd finally see me. Differently, I went, and it was the worst mistake I could have made. The party was at my parents' house. There were like 20 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, the whole bunch. Grace was there looking amazing, in expensive clothes I'd probably paid for without knowing it, being the center of attention as always. Everyone was talking about how proud they were of her, how she was going to be a successful lawyer, asking her about school. I was in a corner drinking a beer, trying not to feel invisible, when my dad, who'd already had quite a bit to drink, started talking loud enough for everyone to hear. He said something like, "And this is my son Andrew, the one who lives in the city playing with computers," basically making fun of me in front of everyone. People laughed, thinking it was a joke, but I saw the look in his eyes and knew it wasn't. Then my mom added, "Yeah, but at least Andrew helps pay for his sister's college. It's the least he can do since he never studied," she said. It like it was a compliment, but it sounded more like a reminder that my only value was my money. And Grace, my sister who I'd paid everything for during a year, laughed along with everyone and said, "Yeah, Andrew is good for that." She didn't say thank you, didn't defend me, just laughed. I felt like something broke inside me at that moment. I stood there watching my whole family laugh at me, treating me like a joke, like a walking atom, and something in my brain clicked. I left the party without saying goodbye. I literally left my beer on the table and got in my car. No one tried to stop me, no one called or texted asking if I was okay. I drove the 3 hours back to the city crying with rage, with humiliation, with years of feeling like less than. When I got to my apartment, I sat on the living room floor and made a decision. It's over. I wasn't going to send another dollar. I wasn't going to keep destroying my life for people who clearly didn't value or respect me. Like 2 weeks passed when Grace texted me, "Hey, I need the money for next semester. It's like $32,000 this time because tuition went up. When can you transfer it?" Just like that, without asking how I'd been, without mentioning the Christmas party, just assuming I was going to pay. I responded, "I'm not sending any more money, Grace. You're going to have to find another way to pay for your school." She thought I was joking. Sent like 3 more messages saying, "Seriously, Andrew, I need the money." But I didn't respond. Then my mom called furious, screaming on the phone saying, how dare I abandon my sister, that it was my responsibility, that I'd promised to help. I said, "I never promised to pay for her entire education. I paid for 1 year, and that was more than you ever did for me in my whole life." She kept screaming, but I simply hung up. My dad sent me messages saying I was selfish, a bad brother, that family helps each other. I blocked his number. Grace sent me long messages saying I was ruining her life, that she couldn't believe I was being so cruel, that she'd always counted on me. I didn't respond to any of them. The next few months were weird. On one hand, I felt guilty, because Grace was my sister, and part of me loved her. But on the other hand, I felt liberated. Suddenly I had money to spare. I was able to move to a better apartment, bought new furniture, went out with friends, started living like a normal person in their 20s. I realized how much I'd sacrificed for people who never appreciated it. I found out through acquaintances from town that Grace had to take out student loans, that she was struggling financially, that my parents had to sell their car to help her with some money. Part of me felt bad, but most of me thought, they're finally experiencing what I went through for years. Grace failed several classes that semester. I don't know if it was because of financial stress or because she simply wasn't as brilliant as everyone thought, but her grades dropped. By the end of the year, she dropped out of law school completely. She moved back in with my parents, and from what I heard, she was working as a waitress in town. My mom called me from a number I didn't have blocked, crying, telling me I'd ruined Grace's life, that it was all my fault. I told her Grace was an adult responsible for her own decisions and hung up. I blocked that number too. Like 6 months after Grace dropped out of school, my dad lost his job. Apparently there was some kind of incident at the factory. I'm not sure of the details because I wasn't talking to anyone in the family anymore, but he ended up being fired. Suddenly, my parents were really screwed financially, with Grace living with them without stable work and debts piling up. My dad called me from my mom's phone, probably knowing I had his number blocked. His voice sounded different, desperate, nothing like the mocking, dismissive tone he always used with me. He said, "Andrew, I know things have been bad between us, but we really need help. I don't have a job and your mom doesn't make enough. Could you send us something just for a few months until I stabilize?" And you know what? For a second, I almost gave in. But then I remembered the Christmas party. I remembered years of being treated like garbage. I remembered how they'd used and discarded me. I said, "Dad, you never supported me when I needed it. You made fun of my career, treated me like an ATM. And now that you guys are struggling, you expect me to fix everything." The answer is no. He started begging, saying things like, "You were always my son. I know I made mistakes, but family forgives." I said, "Family also respects and appreciates. Two things you never did with me." And I hung up. I haven't talked to any of them since then. That was like a year ago. I blocked all their numbers, deleted them from social media, basically cut them out of my life completely. Do I feel bad sometimes? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There are moments when I think about Grace and wonder how she's doing, or think about my parents who are probably struggling, and I feel a pang of guilt. But then I remember everything I went through, everything I sacrificed, and that guilt fades. 3 months ago, I got promoted to senior developer. Now I make more than double what I was making when I was paying for Grace's school. I started taking business classes online because I want to eventually start my own software company. I have a social life, friends who actually care about me. I even started dating someone a few weeks ago. For the first time in my life, I feel like a whole person, like someone who's worth more than their bank account. And the crazy thing is that all of this was only possible when I stopped carrying the weight of a family that never valued me. I know a lot of people are going to read this and think I'm a monster, that I abandoned my family when they needed me. Most, that I took away my sister's future. And that's okay, everyone can think what they want. But I know my truth. I know I did everything possible to be a good son and a good brother for years. And the only thing I got in return was contempt and exploitation. Sometimes the best decision you can make is to walk away from toxic people, even if they're your family. I don't owe them my entire life just because we share blood. And now, finally, I'm living for myself, building the future I always wanted and that nobody thought I deserved. And that's enough.